Hi, this is Zach,
And this is Patrick,
and welcome to Pipecast.
where we pipe up for pipes and pipe down for what?
Welcome back to Pipecast 2019.
It's been a minute, hasn't it?
It has been a hot minute. We've been away due to personal issues.
Yeah, a lot of life has happened.
Yeah.
Before we get into that, we'll just go and say Happy Halloween.
Well, happy Halloween, everyone.
We, like I said, like we alluded to, we took a little bit of a hiatus, longer than what we thought. But, life happens.
I think the original plan was to come back in July.
Yeah, that didn't happen.
No.
I guess we'll get into that. So, yeah, Zach had a baby.
I did.
You didn't physically have it. That'd have been a sight to see.
That would have been. No, I had a little girl recently, and it's just pretty much taken up all my time. So we finally managed to get some stuff in the way of I guess. Well, we moved some time around, and found a little niche. We're going to try to start doing this once a month.
Yeah. The extra added hurdle that we're having to work around is which I think you may have already known this, but I got engaged, and so then I'm in the process of selling my home, and I'm moving about an hour away from where my home is now. So me and Zach still work together, but we both live 45 minutes to an hour away from work in the opposite directions. So, we still see each other every day, but it's hard to do a pipecast when when we live in different directions.
Also, negotiating something like this at work is always complicated because you got to sit down a certain amount of time and then avoid any type of work conflicts that could arise. You end up chasing your own tail, trying to be like, well, I do get paid to do this, but this is what we enjoy doing. And no one else is going to enjoy us putting a little, time into it. I don't know. But people don't really like paying for your personal hobbies, that's for sure. So we avoid that at all costs.
Yeah. It's I've attempted to do a podcast, not really for public syndication, nothing like that, just for my own fun around the office. We tried doing that in the office, and that proved difficult. I think that only made 6 episode run.
Yeah,
whatever that was.
You had a couple listeners out in Russia, didn't you? Something random like that.
Yeah, it was weird. Really weird. We won't get into that. I don't want NSA on my back or something.
The NSA is going to be about, this random sports podcast I did for a little bit, and the NSA is tracking you all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Speaking of the NSA, the CIA, and Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. I'm just throwing that out there in case you guys are curious. He didn't. So, if you got any questions on that, feel free to not comment.
Feel free not to call us.
Yeah, he just didn't kill himself. That's all you need to know.
Yeah. Well, before we dive too far into that realm, what are you smoking?
I am smoking Howl of the Wind, or Howl of the Wind, I guess is what I think the Scots say. But I thought this would be appropriate. Little tobacco for our Halloween edition. We tried to go towards Haunted Bookshop, and I think we smoked Haunted Bookshop so much that, haven't we talked about that enough? Like a burley base with some versions, good Lord, we've smoked that so much. And don't get me wrong, that's a pleasurable smoke, but I think for this occasion we decided to go with something different. We were thinking about getting that Sleepy Hollow tobacco.
Yeah, that would have been great.
Which is probably what we're going to do for the Halloween edition next year. But that is a special blend that you have to order out of Kentucky. And there were some logistical situations that we were having to contend with. Just because my anniversary usually hits in October, and there's a bunch of other stuff that just gets stacked, and I just really didn't have a lot of extra spending money.
No, and I think this is doing just fine. I've had it. I think we smoked it 2 weeks ago, and that's the first time I'd had it, and I'm really enjoying it. Granted, I'm a little doctored up right now, so I'm tasting a good bit, but maybe not the full hit, but it is good. And what are you smoking? Okay, I'm smoking the same thing. just so y'all are aware. We're both smoking Howl of the Wind or the Wind. Hey, listen, before we tell you what we're smoking in, we need to make our own Halloween blend and call it Will o' the Wisp.
Will o' the Wisp.
Yeah. Or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Just to give it a little extra character.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know what a good southern ghost would be right now off the top of my head. I'm so drained from all these weeks they seem to be running together. October's been a wild one.
It's always the best month, but it's always the fastest. It's always jam-packed with a bunch of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, no one weekend is like free. It's wild. But so I am smoking a new pipe to the Pipecast. This is my General MacArthur style corn cob that I purchased over the summer just for some easy summer smoking. It's smoking it real well.
I've got this little full bit fern down pipe that I like. It's a pretty small fern down pipe, surprisingly. They usually don't come this petite. Most of fern down's pipes are chunky boys. Like I got two others, and they're giant. But this one, it sort of reminds me, if you can imagine an Paul Dunhill. It's very reminiscent of that shape. I think the Dunhill actually has more of a full built, where it's actually sort of almost like a complete J shape. This sort of has a little bit more of an up slant on the shank.
Almost like a swan.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a good pipe. I mean, I like it a lot.
I love the way it looks.
Yeah, I smoke a lot of dark fired Kentucky, and Howl of the Wind is a Virginia base with fire cured Kentucky, and
a little bit of Perique.
I think a little Perique, maybe a dash of Burley, but like I think I taste a lot of Virginia in it. I mean, it's a Virginia base, and then you got a little bit of that smoke from the Kentucky.
Yeah. No, yeah, I love that pipe. It's more my style. That real small, almost a nose warmer, maybe a jaw clencher.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, it's nice. I'm over here. I couldn't even clench this if I wanted to.
No, not that. That thing's gigantic. It looks like a honeycomb.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, is that right? Yeah, it looks like a honeybee comb, like a honeybee,
like a beehive,
more like a hornet's nest, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's about. I mean, it's longer than one of my fingers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got a big
I mean,
bowl.
it's easily, golly, it's got to be at least 3 inches down.
But that is.
And what is it, an inch across in diameter? Like,
yeah, at its widest part, it sort of tapers down. Like you said, like a hive.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of look.
Is it a sitter though, or?
I think there's too much weight on this end. So it has like a bamboo stem sort of coming out, and then it turns into
It might be birch.
It could be birch. Yeah, that might be what it is. But then it turns into a plastic stem, and I think if you took that off, that little tip at the end, it might be able to stand by itself. But
is that tip acrylic?
I think it is. It's cheap.
Gotcha.
It's cheap.
I like acrylic because it doesn't mark up that, So this is a Cumberland vulcanite stem, and I don't even like putting it on my teeth because it just marks up so bad. You almost have to be careful with it because you're just going to end up scraping it and creating all kinds of nasty little marks inside your bit. Like it's just awful, like right on the edge.
Yeah. This is a nice blend. Getting back to it,
it's a smoother blend. It doesn't of course, this is the season you really want to be smoking a pipe anyway. Like most of the time I don't find myself reaching for the pipe. I like a corncob pipe in the summer, but I'm going to go for, as I said, I think before, a lot of the Lakeland tobaccos, very floral, like rose, things that are going to taste like dish detergent or dish soap or grandma's perfume to some people. Mm-hmm. They're not for everyone, but I do like Grousemore and like Bob's Chocolate Flake and some of the blends from Godwith and Hogarth and Samuel Godwith. So those are really what I reach for, but ultimately I think I go for the cigar. A pipe really only comes out fall, winter, spring. As far as like a briar, I smoke really hot too, which is probably not a good thing. I can't seem to stop puffing.
Yeah.
But as soon as winter hits, or fall hits, I'm reaching for two things. I'm reaching for my pipe and nasal snuff.
Mm.
That's pretty much what I do during the fall and winter, especially the winter. Snuff is like sort of how I kind of keep alive during the winter.
I hadn't got into the snuff yet. Now I know my grandmother, she dipped snuff. I don't think she did the nasal, but she dipped it, and she'd spit it in like a cracker box. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen in my life. But yeah.
This is dry snuff, so you sniff it.
Yes. Oh, okay.
Like it's got like
that.
Most of it's got like a menthol. Sort of clears up your sinuses. But it only does it for a short time because then it messes them all up. So anybody who's like, "Oh, I should get that. I have sinus trouble." Let me tell you, it's going to just jack you up more than it's going to help you out at all. But if you're going to get into it, I mean, like, it's nice. They have like nice fruit flavors, coffee, honey. My personal favorite is by Wilson of Shiro called Grand Cairo, heavy bergamot blend. It's like sort of like Earl Grey tea.
Yeah.
It's probably the best snuff you can get. So, speaking of Grand Cairo,
oh yeah,
me and the wife are talking about going to Egypt for a 10-year.
You said that'd be in 2020.
2021.
Okay, so you got a little more than a year to get ready.
Yeah, plan up. I mean, I don't want to jump. You don't want to jump into a big old trip like that, like too quick. But like,
well, especially
I want to do one more. Yeah, since I got the little one, I want her to be old enough where she's not extremely difficult to manage. So she'll be 2 when we go because we'd like to go in the winter, and that. At least, everyone says terrible 2s, but I think actually 3s are probably a lot worse. So at least she'll be kind of mobile and a little bit more, she can eat more solid foods and things. My parents seem like real keen on keeping her. Of course, I'm not of the type who likes to dump on the grandparents. I'm actually sort of super against that.
Yeah.
I had a kid. It's my responsibility to raise them. But like, if I could get one more vacation in with my wife, I think I would enjoy that. I know next December we'd like to just rent a cabin and go up to Gatlinburg for Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not on Christmas, but like at the beginning of December.
Yeah.
And just me, her, and the baby. And maybe like if my parents or her mom wants to come visit, that'd be one thing. But like, I'd like to do one more last kind of hurrah vacation with her because I feel like she should probably have 2 really good vacations. And we've sort of positioned ourselves to be capable of doing that soon.
That's good.
I know you've got some big stuff coming up very soon. You were 3 months out, basically.
Yeah. The 30th of December, me and the family, like my parents, my fiance, of course, and that's my siblings, we're all going on a cruise to like Cozumel and the Progresso. And I've never been on a cruise. My parents have never been on one. That's really the reason why we're going.
What cruise line?
Carnival. Leaving out of New Orleans. And it's only like a 5-day. So that should be fun. I think the sort of the added benefit, like I'm not gonna use the money to buy no Wi-Fi plan. I'm just gonna, unplug.
I think that'd be good.
Which I really don't have a problem with being unplugged anyway. I mean, I don't.
That's what we did. We just like kind of turned everything off and just enjoyed.
Yeah.
Take books.
Yeah, that's definitely the plan. I'm probably gonna be on that deck, reading a book every day.
It's something about, like, tell you this, because Carnival is, I want to kind of give you a couple of, so I did a Carnival cruise, so I'll give you a couple of little tips, maybe. Not super tippy, but you know what I mean. Like, I'm not trying to tell you what's up, but
no, you go ahead.
There's 2 waves of people. There are like some people who are just enjoying retirement, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's really 3 waves: enjoying retirement, and then family vacation, which you'll see a lot less of those depending on the year and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then the other one is I'm here to party, like so much party. Now I think because you're doing it at the end of December, you're going to find a lot more elderly people who are just like, I want to get away, so it's probably going to be a lot more relaxed. But those are the 3 types. What I find is the best is when you're on a party ship, and you'll know real quick. Your best option, in my opinion, is to wake up before the sun rises or right at sunrise, because ain't no one going to be on that deck except for you. And you just take your book and just get you a cup of coffee, because that buffet is usually always open. Something's always open to eat on.
That's what I heard.
And then you just sit out there, drink your coffee, and then, you'll know about when you see one or two people, just go make you a plate and eat, and then just continue reading. And then it'll get busier, and you can either go to the pool or return to your room.
Yeah. That might be when I turn into the party. But no, yeah, that's probably what me and Ann are gonna do. We're just gonna read the whole trip, and but yeah, then we'll get back the first week of January, like January 4th, I think, 4th or 5th, and
You want to go to that pyramid?
Okay. Yeah, there's a Mayan pyramid.
You want to go?
I think we are gonna try to.
I think that'd be fun to see.
Yeah, oh yeah, I think so too, and I had forgotten about it, so somebody reminded me yesterday. And but no, then Ann is gonna leave, like, I don't know, like 2 or 3 days later, going back home to Vietnam. And then I'm leaving like a week after her, so she's gonna be there 3 weeks, and then I'm gonna be there 2 weeks, and we'll return together at the end of January. So it'll be my first time. Well, I guess. Since we're going to Cozumel, it'll be my second time out of the country, but all in the same month.
In a way, because people forget, like, North America is North America is North America. Don't get me wrong, cultures are different, but like the difference in something so close to the United States is marginal. There's language differences naturally. There's cultural differences in things. There's a heavy Catholic influence in Mexico, and drug culture. The music's a little bit different, but ultimately, what you're going to find is that it's not particularly that much different, because most of everything is a carryover from the United States because of North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to see the same commodities with variation from south of the border to the Great White North.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I find. I mean, you don't really see that much variation in like Canada.
Yeah. I mean, I don't expect too much. I really wouldn't even consider it being out of the country, except that it was, said you probably want a passport in case something happens.
Well, it doesn't matter, because you'll be killing 2 birds with 1 stone anyway.
Yeah. But yeah, so then hitting Vietnam, and then a little bit of a break, and then in October we'll get married, and probably gonna road trip it up to Niagara Falls, go to Canada, the New England area, and probably spend Halloween, somewhere in Boston, Salem, New York, Sleepy Hollow, somewhere up in there. So that next year will be a lot of traveling to get that out of the way, because then I don't know how fast them babies will come. You never know.
Yeah.
It changes from month to month.
Well, that clock really starts ticking around 30.
Oh, well, then hers is already ticking.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's one of those things. But, I mean, it seems like you two have gotten into a lot. And by the time you roll around, I mean, heck, as much time as you'll spend in, it'd be nice to meet the in-laws and everything.
Yeah, that'll be unique. I mean, it's a little weird with that language barrier. I mean, I've already experienced it a little bit. She has an aunt and a niece who have come here, and they first was in Nebraska with other family, but they came down here, and there's only a few little bit I can say, and there's only a few little bit they can say. So, but that as long as you got an interpreter there, it's fine. It's really okay for me because I don't talk a lot when I meet new people. Mm-hmm. So if there's already a language difference, I got an easy out. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you.
Don't worry, I'm a quiet guy. You don't have to worry about me.
Mm-hmm.
I ain't gonna say anything. Just over here sipping on my cognac. I don't know. What do you sip on?
When? Just whenever?
I guess.
Shit. Beer, wine, whiskey.
I'm sipping on my wine, so it's fine.
Yeah, I'm just sipping on my wine. But yeah. So, yeah, maybe some good traveling going on for both of us, you know, in the next few years.
I hope so. Kind of like I said, just get like one of those last ditch things before the kids really take off.
Yeah.
It's crazy too. He's so much bigger already. It's fascinating. Like another thing too is how much you end up enjoying a kid. I don't even like babies. I mean, it'd be safe to say that I dislike babies. But as soon as I had mine, all that changed.
Yeah.
One thing that didn't change was like, you know, I'm not particularly fond of getting screamed at in my face by a baby. But like, I definitely can handle it a lot better than if I never had a kid.
Yeah.
It's kind of changed gears a little bit because we kind of done a little foray into our lives over the last couple of months. Not that anyone really cares. But like something interesting that like Patrick and I actually almost simultaneously stumbled into.
I don't even know where we're going with this.
You will in a second.
Okay.
Buckle
your seatbelts.
Yeah, buckle up, guys. The last couple of months, Patrick and I, well, we've been progressively exercising and doing things, trying to like at least, I don't know, rein in our
fatness.
I guess that's probably the best way to describe it. I'll let you say it, not me.
Yeah.
But one of the ways, what we discovered along the way is we got into zero drop minimalist shoes. And it's like the most random thing to get involved in all at once.
Yeah. We're drinking the Kool-Aid.
We are. We really did get involved with a cult leader that we managed to hire at our company.
Yep.
And he 100% suckered us into this. And like, but the thing is like it does seem like all the components to what he said made sense to me.
Yeah.
As long as things make sense, I'm fine. Now, if there's a couple of things like I probably would jump off if it got a little too crazy. I don't like any of that. You know, your feet are close to Mother Earth and your spiritual. So as soon as you start talking that mess, like I'm out.
Well, okay, I'm not. We'll get into it later.
Well, go on.
I was gonna say, I wasn't too big into it at first, but then I watched the video and I'm sort of convinced, but I'm not convinced enough to like go buy the stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like well, there's a running sandal. They're Earth Runners. They have a little copper bit on the bottom of them to keep you grounded, they say. Now, that's just propaganda, probably. But
I 100% believe that's hippie, hoodoo crap.
But
like, that don't make no sense.
But, now, granted, I'm only going off of this person. This person was a doctor. Not a doctor of feet or anything like that, I don't think. But she was pregnant. She had her child. And her child, just for some reason, just cried. It was always crying the first few months, that she was here. Just not once ever crying unless they were sleeping. Well, one day she was barefoot and she walked out and got, in their front yard, and she was holding the baby, and she must have been wearing like some kind of shirt where the baby was touching her skin to skin. Mm-hmm. Baby stopped crying. And like, that baby and this went on for a while, and that baby could be dead asleep. And then as soon as her foot touched concrete or went inside the house, baby woke up screaming. Now, like I said, that's just weird. It's anecdotal. There's no science to it. But they did do some science trying to ground people while they slept. And it did look like inflammation in their body went down based on the study. But, like I said, that's not the problem, really, in my opinion.
But are real scientists doing it, or are these hippies?
It was a scientist, but...
Okay. So it's not someone who's just like, yeah, man, I did a scientific experiment, like, after my liberal arts degree. Also, like, Ezekiel bread and, like, bean sprouts. Like, that's what I always find is that people who are really into this kind of stuff, they're just really into it, and they have all the propaganda and all the soy just, like, polluting their brains. And just, and then all of a sudden, the next thing you know, you're just like, yeah, I'm moving to Jonestown, Indiana.
Yeah, I get that, and that a lot of people look at just what we're talking about, just the minimal barefoot, just normal that way.
And that's fine. That like, I'm at least 80%, convinced. There's 20% that I'm like, this could be trash.
Well, and see, that's the thing. I think me and you come from different angles on what we are, or like what sold us and what didn't, and what hasn't sold us. So, like, the two big things that you'll hear when people talk about minimalist shoes is the zero drop heel. not having a heel support, because the theory is, if you needed an arch, or if you needed a heel support, you could have been born with it.
Mm-hmm.
And and it sort of limits you being able to stretch out your metatarsals and work the foot. You end up having a lazy foot because of it. Now that sold you. You understand that, and I mean, I believe it. But what really sold me, and I don't even think you're convinced on yet, is the second part of minimal shoe wear. And that's the wide toe box.
Not 100% convinced on that.
But see, to me, that convinced me. That was what won me over first, because you can visualize it. I can like the benefits of going to zero drop are, over time you should have better your knees. If you have knee problems, that should go away. You won't slouch as much because your body's not trying to overcompensate because you're lifted and you're walking funny. It's not an instant like, this is the difference. But with wide toe boxes, you can look this up. Just look at Google a natural foot and a normal foot. Natural being how like some Native American tribe or something. Look at their feet, and then look at our feet, and it's like an instant. Like I can see that. I can see what they're talking about. And see, since I've been wearing my wide toes, I have noticed a gap in my big toe to the second toe has gotten. There was no gap before.
And it's gradually.
Yeah, it's gradually in there. And I got some toe spacers too. And I don't wear them every day, but really just wearing these shoes and giving myself that room. And I got toe socks too to help with it. And that's really, and I think that's, like I said, I'm sold on that part, because to me, American shoes are mild forms of feet bonding. I mean, it's legitimate.
I can see what people are saying about that.
Yeah.
I think with me, it's just like balance. I do understand like the sort of, because if you sit on a couch for a long period of time, you become sedentary and then you start to atrophy.
Yeah.
So if you create sort of a binding agent and a limiting agent for the muscles inside your foot, like they'll atrophy and become weak.
Yeah.
So over time, if you kind of go back to like a minimalist approach, and you have to engage those muscles, and then naturally with any type of strength training and conditioning, like they will get stronger. And I am sort of experiencing that.
Because you've gone full, because I don't run as much as you do. I run like 0%.
I've had to cut back on my running quite a bit because of, I think I had a bout of gout.
Yeah.
Which was pretty nasty. Like it pretty much like incapacitates me, which is weird because my diet is really strict now. For those of you who don't know, like I know I'm not just talking here, but I've lost like 57 pounds over the since May.
Yeah.
So I mean it's pretty significant. I've been running about 4 to 6 miles a day, but now I'm about at 2 miles, just because it did feel like I sort of hurt my foot pretty seriously. It turned out it was just gout, because I mean I couldn't even. It was so intolerable, the pain. My father pretty much described exactly what it was, and I was like, "That's what it is. Cool." Like the rich man's disease. Boom, right there, like incapacitated. But I mean, I got rid of it in a couple of days, and I'm back running again and training. But these shoes, the minimalist shoe, helps with a lot of balance inside the gym. I even run in sandals, like I don't even know what they call them. Lunas, yeah.
See, and I got a version of those, and which I get shit on every time I wear them.
The zero shoes?
Yes.
Those zero shoes are awesome. I don't know why you're catching so much flack.
Well, even if I had the Lunas, I would, because they have a more feminine look to them.
A sandal is a sandal. Like, I don't get it. Like, to me, if you're wearing a thong sandal, so anything that divides the toe from the first toe, I don't even know what you call it, the pointer toe, whatever.
Yeah.
The first.
It's what do they call that? Oh God, what they call that thing? It is a toe post. The thing that's dividing them, the toe post.
So as long as you have something like that, I mean, I feel like that's feminine in general.
Yeah, but the thing.
But I mean, I like.
To paint y'all a picture, if y'all haven't seen these type of shoes, like so, there's several different ones. There's Lunas, there's Bedrocks, there's Zero. The thing I think that makes it feminine is that there is a thong, a toe post that comes up, But like normal flip flops, like kind you see like people wear on a beach or something, where it would normally just V shape and go off to the sides. These come up a good bit and then sort of wrap around around your ankle.
But that's just so you guys know, the reason they do that and the reason that is required is because if you just have the thong and you're running in them, so you can imagine it's like flip flops.
Yeah,
you're tensing in your toes to keep traction. You're going to face plant. So like if you have a wrap around the backside of the heel, and then through that heel, and it's a stabilizer. So like you don't actually need. Well, this is just my experience from running. Like you don't actually need anything but protection for your feet, because my feet, after a lot of running, has strengthened up enough where like they're taking care of it. Yeah. And you stay on your toes. Now, if you're crashing down on your heel, it's pretty rough.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. Well, before we get into that, going back to the, having to, if you wear just, regular old flip-flops and you're trying to keep the traction, you're basically going back to the problem with having a heel. You're not stretching the metatarsals. You're not getting those out there and getting them moving. You got them condensed trying to hold that flip-flop on. So you got to have some kind of heel or back of the ankle strap. But yeah. So, heel striking, that's the big thing, and by having a bunch of heel support, you forego the initial pain of striking on your heel, but in the end, that leads to knee problems and hip problems, because the problem is, we're going to get preachy here for a minute, which then will segue into something else I want to talk about that relates to this. The problem is, you got to treat your feet like they're like foundation. And, if you've got a hip problem, if you've got a knee problem, more than likely you got a foot problem. It works its way up.
There is a lot of case for that.
So it's like, if I can recommend anybody who's thinking about this or who's open-minded to looking into it, there is a website, and they have a podcast. It's called The Foot Collective, and they're very they're deep in the Kool-Aid though. So just be ready. But they got a lot of information. They talk a lot about other kind of health, staying mobile, keeping mobility throughout the day. One of the things, I'm stealing from them talking about this, but I'm sure they don't mind. You got to get the message out some way. If you're tired at the end of the day, if you want some energy, don't sit on the couch. Walk around. Sit on the floor. Like, do something different than lying down like that, and your energy will pick up.
Oh, that's true.
And it's
one
crazy.
of the lull that I get at the end of the day, as long as I'm moving, I end up burning into a second wind. The interesting part is that if I'm running off of 3-4 hours of sleep, which is not unusual for me right now with a kid, if I can break that hurdle, because I'm not gonna lie, like any true red-blooded American, I love like a 5 o'clock nap.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, you're not American. I don't care. You probably think Jeffrey Epstein killed himself.
I like them, but I hate when I do them, because I can't sleep later. Like that evening, I can't.
Well, see, that's my problem. Then I ended up getting 3 hours of sleep the next night. But it doesn't matter because I got a kid, so it's normal. But if I break through, this is the weird part. If I break through that mold, right?
The 5 o'clock nap.
The 5 o'clock nap, and I push to like say 8 o'clock. I get a second wind out of nowhere. Then I still can't get to sleep till like 11:30. So it's like I almost can't even win.
Well, I'm glad you're bringing that up, because that's another part. And I found this out by listening to the Foot Collective folks. And it goes hand in hand really with the minimal footwear. Sleep is a big problem, like in this country, well, in the world probably. And like I said, it goes hand in hand with feet, because feet and an 8 hours night's rest are like the foundation of a healthy life. Like the way this guy put it, if I told you you'll see weight loss, you'll have more energy, you'll just overall feel better, and all these different kind of things, you'll learn more, you'll be able to retain your knowledge. If I told you that was in a form of a pill, people would be buying it off the shelf left and right. But in all reality, all that comes with 8 hours of sleep at night. All of those benefits.
So that is bonkers. Okay, time out.
Yeah.
When I say that's bonkers, I do not mean that.
You mean
it's
just
incorrect.
crazy to think about?
It's crazy to think about. And let me tell you something else too. So I'm on like a weight loss journey, guys. So like, I mean, the end of this line for me is probably going to be close to 80 pounds total. So I'm about 25 pounds away from my total.
Yeah.
For where I want to be at. Maybe 90. We'll see. But like, you get into it, you exercise, but like, so just to kind of clarify what I'm saying, to lose weight, you need to basically expend more calories than you take in. So there's a couple of ways you can do that. A, you can take in less calories, right? And the less calories you take in amounts to weight loss. Depending on how many less you take in will depend on, how much weight you lose over time. If you cut your calories, say you're 2,000 calories a day, you take 500 out a day, 3,500 calories in 7 days equates to about 1 pound of fat. I mean, it varies from person to person, but that's a relatively good average, okay? That's pretty much standard,
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, anything you expend outside of that realm, in other words, exercise, not being in a sedentary kind of non-mobile position, you're going to burn more calories because there's a normal caloric kind of burn that you do, which is sort of just, involuntary calorie burn, where you're not really doing anything. It's just like to keep you awake and running. This is how many calories you have to burn in a given period. Usually can average this out. But the funny thing is like that's pretty much universally accepted.
Yeah.
Yet there are a myriad of diets, debates, arguments on the intricacies of this kind of thing. I say that to say this. I have seen only short of dieting, as many arguments about the way in which people should sleep.
Really?
Yes. 7 hours, 6 hours, 5's fine, 8. You should really get 10. If you get 10, it'll kill you. I'm not even kidding. Like,
yeah, I've heard if you sleep too much, it could hurt you.
It could hurt you. That 7 hours could kill you. That really, it's like the sweet part of 7.5. I actually heard that you could stay up. The real sleep, like what would be considered caveman sleep, I heard. Anytime I hear caveman, I'm like, that's definitely not what I want to do. But this is what I literally heard. Caveman sleep is about 2 hours every 4 hours. Because you need to be mobile and you need to sleep about 2 hours every 4 hours. So that equates to something I can't remember. Like that kind of averages out relatively easy. Then I heard this one crazy thing where it's like, if you can sleep for 30-minute periods 4 times a day, you only equate 2 hours of sleep. So you're up for 22 hours. Now, if you do that for 7 days straight, that when you drop into the 30-minute sleep, your mind immediately goes to REM sleep, and you're actually more rested than if you slept the full 8. And that people actually can stay up for, it's like apparently like a living nightmare to get to. But if you do this for 7 days straight, where you're only sleeping in 30-minute increments every what is that, like every almost 5.5 hours?
Yeah.
That like as soon as you lay down, you immediately go into REM sleep. Now you have to do this in the middle of the workday, but at the same time, it's like you can probably take your lunch for 30 minutes and then pass out.
Yeah.
And then you go immediately into REM sleep and then you move up. But apparently, it's really tough to get into. But once you get into that rhythm, that you actually are more rested in a 22-hour, 2-hour sleep block than if you actually did the 8 hours. What I'm saying is that there are so many things on the table. Now, don't listen to me. I would never do that. That sounds awful. Like I couldn't even imagine trying to like push myself to be in auto, because you have to. The reason why it's such a nightmare is because you have to build to auto REM sleep.
That is, I'd love to hear. So, if you want to hear more about sleep in general, there's a Foot Collective podcast episode on it where they reference this person who was on an episode of the Joe Rogan Experience. I think his name is Matthew Walker. He's like you can find him on Twitter. I think he's like either the sleep diplomat or the ambassador of sleep or something like that. Either because he's the leading guy on sleep, and he's the one that sort of talks about all that stuff. I'd love to hear his thought on that because, one thing that he mentioned that I thought, it sort of changed my way of thinking. A lot of people, have a nightcap, like some wine or something before they go to bed.
Right.
And he says that's not really what you should do because alcohol affects the way you sleep. It's a sedatory So that being sedated is completely different than a sleep cycle. Like it's something completely different. So if you drink before you go to bed, you're not really going through your normal sleep cycle. You're being sedated into sleep, which doesn't give you the same benefits. Actually, could hurt you. But that really was a shock to me. But I don't want to take too much from him. But y'all would need to listen to that if you want to hear some more. Well, here's one thing. Well, I'll say this one cool little tidbit, and I'm gonna paraphrase a lot of it. But the main message is here. So when the first, like there's those residency hospitals,
right.
And they run like 30 hours, 36 hours nonstop. That's the shift you're working. That all started because there was a guy who created the first one at Johns Hopkins, and he was renowned for being able to stay up 30 hours and just going. So he really just out of competition started making his students do that, and so it sort of become a thing, and we still do it to this day. But the real secret was they found out he was one of the first accidental addicts of cocaine. He was testing cocaine for different medical purposes, so he got addicted to it, and that's why he was staying up so late, or why he was staying up for a day and a half. So these 30-hour shifts that these people are doing all started. It became standard, became tradition, because some guy was on crack working on people. And that's just so weird.
Do you have any idea of like his body count? Through malpractice?
Oh, I don't know.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah. Like I said, there might be some more information I'm forgetting because it's been about a month since I listened to those 2 episodes. Because, the initial one, the one with Joe Rogan, Matthew Walker, he talks about a lot of stuff, and then the Foot Collective talked about it, and they listened to that same podcast and referenced a lot of the same stories. But yeah, so sort of we chased a rabbit a little bit there, but yeah. So me and you both have sort of gone to the minimalist footwear, different reasons really. You're on your weight loss journey, and that's awesome. I'm not gonna say I wish I could do it because I can do it. I'm just actively choosing not to, I guess, because I'm lazy. But
I think that there's there's sort of a pragmatism into not going into it right now before the holidays. There's also a pragmatism of not going into it before like some heavy vacations.
Oh yeah.
Actually, it's probably going to be more insufferable for you to deal with like those types of diets. Yo-yoing.
Yeah.
You probably actually, as staunchly as I'm against, and like if you guys know anything about me, I am staunchly against New Year's resolutions because it just seems like it's almost unless you have like really, really, really strong will, or you can kind of push yourself beyond. The fail rate is so high because, I mean, it just really is. It seems like everyone I know that started a resolution, really, I think a resolution is to start somewhere in like June, 6 months in.
A mid-year.
I mean, like that's when I've started. Most of the things I've started that are successful start between June and October. Mm. If I ever start anything in January, it's almost destined to fail.
Yeah. Well, maybe because then everybody else fails with you.
Right. Well, another thing too is like you want to be on the path to encouraging people. You don't want to be on the path where they can encourage you to quit. And that happens a lot too, because you'll see a fail rate usually around March. And you got your diehards, really what I call your swimsuit edition diehards that will make it to May because it's swimsuit season, and then they fall off the bandwagon around June. But and this is specifically for weight loss, but like I can tell you right now, as much as I'm against a resolution, I think really starting sometime at the end of January, maybe February, probably would be your best bet because you're going to go headlong into Thanksgiving. I think maybe cutting back might be not the end of the world.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do.
But I mean, like, you all right?
Yeah, I was getting this ash off my hand.
Oh. Cutting back might be something that would be beneficial, and maybe doing some exercise. But I think any type of like really stringent diet would probably break you a little bit. Well, I'm not saying it's impossible because nothing's impossible, but like it would just be miserable. Even me, I'm doing like I calculate all my calories right now, and I meal prep, and I'm intermittent fasting, so I have an 8-hour window where I'm allowed to eat. Even I will drop off for Halloween, which is one of my favorite holidays, and then of course Thanksgiving. I want to have at least 2 days where I have to eat.
Yeah.
And you don't want to gorge, but I mean, like, I want to eat. I'm going to eat bad too. There's just no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And it's hard not to gorge because everything that is presented to me
is delicious.
It's delicious. Like,
what?
And then of course Christmas.
Yeah, I think you're right about waiting until January because I mean, heck, going to Vietnam and coming back, I'm either going to gain 10 pounds or lose 30. Because I'm gonna be fed fried cockroaches or some crap. I'm just gonna be like, oh, back up, Jack.
Well, I think you can get like $1 pho on the side of the road.
Oh yeah,
I mean that's what's gonna kill you.
Yeah, the bombing might kill me. Cause like, yeah, really, I'll probably that's all I'll eat probably while I'm there is bombing and pho.
I mean, crap, that's like street food and it's delicious.
Mm-hmm. It's like pho vendors on the street. Pho, that's the hot dog vendor of Saigon. Like it's just there. I say that like I know, but I mean I hadn't even been there yet. But
well, I mean you have someone with prior knowledge of the stuff.
Yeah. Granted, it's just a big city to her. She's like whatever.
She a country girl, isn't she?
Oh yeah. She's like. I mean my mental map's a little off, but I mean she's somewhere. She's like 4 hours. She's from like 4 hours. East of Saigon and like maybe an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours from Da Nang. So she's like up in the middle. It's sort of like really the middle of it's southern middle, I guess.
I got you.
Well, okay. Well, we've done a lot of talking here, but what we really, I mean, what we don't really ever do that. We're gonna take a little intermission break and we're gonna get back with you on some cool stuff about our favorite time of year, Halloween.
That's right.
And we're back.
Halloween. Trick or treat.
It is no shock or no surprise that I mean we love Halloween.
Love it.
Like it's crazy. I mean I grew up like one of the first movies I watched was Halloween. The 1978. It's a little old flick. 1978, little no-name director, John Carpenter. Y'all probably don't know him. But, you know, that's one of the first movies I watched. You know, like I remember being 5 watching it. And my dad sort of, we're sitting there watching it, and then you know, the nudity scene popped up. Eyes got covered real quick, and then they was gone. I was watching the rest of it, you know. So, you know, Halloween's just a good time of the year, and you know, it starts to smell good.
Because when you grow up in like the 90s, watching any type of basic cable, TBS, USA, TNT,
AMC,
they had were just old horror movies. Because I mean, you just show them over and over and over and over and over again all through October. And of course, if you're a real kid of the 90s, you grew up with TNT's Monster Vision with Joe Bob Briggs every Friday night. And I watched that. And then when I was really young, before I even really got into like kind of what I would consider more adult television, adult film, my parents would talk to me about horror movies. Like I wouldn't watch them when I was young, like 3, 4, but they'd tell me about horror movies. They'd be like, "Yeah, we saw this movie one time." I remember because Dad told me about this movie once, and he says the scariest movie he's ever seen in his entire life. And he described this movie, and I remember thinking like, "This is awful," you know. It's my dad, so I think that anything that could possibly scare him is probably the most horrifying thing ever. And he told me about this book made of human flesh and this sword that like bled out the mouth, and he was talking about Evil Dead. And I ended up running into it many years later, and I was like, "This is the movie that scared my dad so badly." Like the first, like the original Evil Dead. And I remember thinking like that was hilarious because there's no way that movie was terrifying. But I mean, like, you know, I guess if you see something like that in the 80s and it's the first time you'd ever seen it, it's probably pretty troubling. This was during the height of the Satanic Panic, so a lot of demon stuff, and you know, mixed with the 80s, mixed with the Deep South.
Yeah,
I'm sure that probably has some sort of toll on your psyche because you probably go into a fire and brimstone situation on Sunday, and then you're at the drive-in on a Saturday watching basically like a grindhouse style like horror flick, you know.
Yeah.
So I always kind of had a thing for horror. Of course, when you come up on it, like you just started developing, and then I think by the time I was in high school, I was just pretty much a full-blown fanatic.
Yeah, I mean, I was big into the horror scene, and I I'm not gonna say I had a non-cultured taste for horror, and so like I was not well versed. I I had my niche. I like I love the Halloween movies, some of the other slasher movies, depending on how well it was done and things like that. Um, you know, really wasn't big into the body horror. Um, so like I said, I liked horror, but I was sort of limited. And I had older parents, so like their idea of horror was very different too. Um, so I fell out of it, like in my like late college years. For some reason, I just got sort of burnt out on them, and I sort of went away from horror, with the exception of Halloween and Halloween 2. I still would watch those every year, but I sort of fell out of it, and I just now recently sort of got back into it, and I'm going back and watching some of the stuff I might have missed back in the day.
There's a resurgence. I noticed that, like, even horror, and it's like it comes in such weird waves. I don't think it ever like really goes away.
Mm-hmm.
But like, if you know, like what I've noticed is that horror has sort of migrated back into television.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not saying these are the best things ever, but like shows like American Horror Story and The Walking Dead probably did a lot for them, and things like that.
Well, people just like they have just a love affair with horror. The problem is that as you've seen a lot with anything, the thrills seem to become cheaper and cheaper.
Yes.
It's hard to kind of reinvigorate the genre. The last real time I saw anything that really sort of kind of spurred the horror to the forefront of my imagination was probably It Follows.
Yeah. Which it didn't do a lot. Like, it still did what all good horror does, but it brought a new edge to it.
I think it just reinvigorated it because you got to think about it. The slow stalking killer is like almost as ageless as you can get for modern cinema.
Yeah.
I mean, Frankenstein wasn't fast. Dracula wasn't sprinting around. Michael Myers, Jason. I mean, the first time zombies are all shuffling.
Yeah, they're not really running.
Even in The Exorcist, I mean, she's not necessarily slow, but she's even moving from that bed too much.
Yeah.
Well, monsters really, the almost like limitations of speed create attention, but also like this idea that you could probably survive.
Yeah.
Really, the first time, I mean, this is not accurate at all, because in Psycho, obviously, Norman runs, but like really the first time in modern, you see like really fast killers, like kind of in Scream. I mean, Krueger's not slow.
Leatherface wasn't that slow.
Leatherface wasn't that slow, but I mean, really, when you think of like our generation's fast, they really Scream. It was like, oh wow, they're running. Like,
he added in a lot.
I mean, you're really running.
And those are good movies.
Yeah, they're not bad.
Well, and they're housed in the lore and the fandom of Halloween, and I think that lends to them being really good. I mean, it was initially, I had read that it was supposed to be more parody, like it was like trying to parody the tropes of horror movies. And the original name was going to be Scary Movie, but then they changed it, and then of course years later we got full-blown comedies called Scary Movie, which was a parody of Scream.
Yeah, I mean that's
it's crazy how that works.
But I mean, like, I think the thing is like the parody between tongue in cheek, which would have been Scream, which it still had.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Versus like full on like slapstick goof.
Yeah. Which was Scary Movie. Yeah.
Which I wouldn't even consider satire. I mean, it really just was like a bunch of dick and fart jokes, really.
I remember, I don't know if I watched them all the way through in many, many years, but I remember one scene, and it may not be the first one, it could have been the second one, where she's watching the movie and somebody runs up to the door in the movie, and then her doorbell rings, and then she opens up the door, and it's the person in the movie in her door. I remember that.
Oh yeah.
And that was real funny to me, but and of course the Tim Curry stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Guy, but
So, real quick, back to what I was saying. Because we really went on the side there. But It Follows sort of like reinvigorated that slow ambling creep. But the thing is that like you really were the difference between that is actually being alone, versus being the only one that could see it. I thought that was an interesting take. Like, because Voorhees, Myers, basically they narrow down the playing field, but they do it individually. So they'll kill one person by themselves, and they'll kill another person by themselves, and there might be two cops, and then they kill two cops. But ultimately, it's usually just a one-on-one match. Well, It Follows, I mean, they were in groups of people.
But only one saw it.
But only one saw it. And I thought that was an interesting take on it, where it's like, you are truly alone, however, you are surrounded with people who are your friends.
Yeah. And it took, the biggest trope of all, if you have sex in a horror movie, you die. And they made that the villain.
Right.
They made sex the villain. And it's like, whoa. That was a neat way to twist and subvert the stuff. Yeah, that's a really good movie. I mean, but based on the evolution of horror movies, I think, It Follows. I think The Conjuring's a pretty good, for the time that it came out and the type of horror movies that were coming out. It Follows has that more indie feel to it. Well, I think it is an independent film, but I think.
Well, that guy only has I think at the time one other credit to his name, which was The Myth of the American Sleepover, which is a super independent, kind of almost 16 Candles meets Wes Anderson meets, it's very really indie, very specific genre related kind of material. Not like a tongue-in-cheek, it's the 80s meets Virgin Suicides. It's like a Sofia Coppola, John Hughes movie. Sorry, there's a lot of genre bending, but his second credit is It Follows, and that is another teen, centric movie, but man, he really nails it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think like I said, I think it's all it like you said, reinvigorated what a lot of us 80s and 90s kids enjoyed about the slasher films of that time period.
Right, and it wasn't even that big of a slasher.
No, it wasn't. It gave you the feeling of it though.
Mm-hmm.
That was weird. But again, the more modern movies like The Conjuring is pretty good. Insidious has its moments. I thought Sinister was good for being a jump scare type movie. It was good. They relied on them, but it got you involved.
The irony with Sinister is it didn't have to rely on them.
No,
there were moments that were really unnerving, and I feel like the whole experience was cheapened by the fact that they tried to do these boo scares on you.
Yeah.
And I'm very susceptible, so I'm not saying oh, they don't bother me. They really do, but the thing is I always describe, people are like, oh, you're jumpy. And I'm like, yeah, but I mean, if someone shot a gun over my head, I'd probably jump. It's just I don't particularly like that. I don't like this tension, which is fine. That's always wonderful. But then dead silence with an indiscriminate amount of time for them to have basically a howitzer to go off.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Well, really saying that they're cheap, really, I mean, it's true, because if a jump scare, it scares you and it's over. The scare does not last with you. Whereas with The Conjuring, to me, what lasted with me was the way that the wife looks when she's all demonized and possessed.
Mm-hmm.
That stays with you.
It's unsettling. There's another movie that came out last year, I think, called Ghost Stories. It's an anthology.
Oh yeah.
I think you can watch it on Hulu if you got that right now. That's probably this is complicated. I really liked it, but then it sort of drops off towards the end. But man, that is one of definitely the first two setups in that film. Man, there were moments where I was really not a lot of jump scares either. I don't think there really were any. There might have been one, two, or something.
Might have been a lead up to one.
There was a couple. I think actually there were a couple of jump scares, but dang, it doesn't matter because they were so. It was so. I was dreading every moment.
Yeah. Oh, it was rough.
There was some. Did you watch it?
Watched it? I watched the first one. I didn't watch the other two.
That movie was rough.
There's some good cinematography in the first one too. Just
that first one where he because you everything that it's one of those situations where for the first time in a long time, most of the time when I'm watching something, I want the person, in distress to do the stupid thing, because really and truly at a certain point, and especially in slasher films, you sort of, you know,
You're
ironically root for the villain.
Oh yeah,
You know,
yeah, you're pulling for him. Especially in Jason movies, you really
really do want, but
and
like,
Freddy.
Yeah, but in this film, you really like, oh, don't do that.
Yeah,
you know,
stop.
Like,
Why are you doing that?
Stop. What are you doing, this man? Like, this is not, because no one is really negative. You know, they're just normal people having to go, a lot of them having to do like essentially their job.
Yeah, if they don't do their job, they're getting fired.
Right,
you know?
And then you're like, oh, don't do this. It'd just be better just to get fired.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like, I hated that because it puts the pressure of work and livelihood up against like literal live living.
Yeah.
Like,
I hate those moments.
Oh man, I'm just.
I mean, they're good.
They're great because it puts you on the edge. But I mean, I don't think I have rooted for a character not to do something that I considered stupid
as much
forever. I mean, most of the time I'm just like, yeah, go into that room by yourself.
Yeah,
Or do this. Ha ha ha. I don't care. But this one, I was just like, hey man, like seriously, you really want to rethink going into that room? Like, I would really rethink this.
Yeah, like get out of there right now. But one movie that I had not seen until this year. Well, there's a lot that I had not seen until this year. So, like I said earlier, I had a very narrow window of horror that I was a big fan of when I was younger. So, and of course, I got a Shudder, and I've been watching some Joe Bob on Shudder, and watching some stuff I had not seen before, like the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original Hills Have Eyes. What was one of them? Tourist Trap. I really loved Tourist Trap.
And I recommend you guys watch, if you got Shudder, it's really cheap. Get that and watch The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs, because like the dude is a scholar.
He knows. I love it when he opens up Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He's like, y'all gonna hate me by the end of this, because he's like, I know way too much about this movie. Like, but
I've actually seen him lecture, and it's amazing. Like, I got to meet him. I mean, he's pretty much one of my heroes.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, if he comes back to Chattanooga, I think in their film festival in April, we should grab tickets and go.
Oh yeah, we definitely should go.
Because I mean, I feel like you're now initiated into that.
Yeah.
That was one of those like weird kind of private things, because people are like, you went to see this guy? Like, I haven't thought about Monster Vision in years, and I was like, well, I mean, I've been a fan for so long. I mean, I don't know how you couldn't. I mean, like, this guy basically informed most of my B movie watching.
Yeah. Well, it was funny when you mentioned that you went to go see him. When you did, I was like, I don't know who that is. And then after getting Shudder this month and watching it, nostalgia kicked in, and I remember watching that with my uncle.
Mm-hmm.
I remember seeing that, and then I was like, okay, I know who you're talking about, but I wasn't really a fan. I mean, because I didn't know.
Well, at the time, I mean, you sort of. The weird thing about Joe Bob is like I could only tell you like one anecdotal thing he'd ever said from Monster Vision, because I was really more into watching films. I would watch for the drive-in totals, and then ultimately, I didn't care.
Yeah.
Like, I just wanted to see whatever he was showing, because he showed interesting things to me.
Yeah.
Granted, they were edited pretty severely because it was cable.
Yeah.
But like, all I wanted to do was watch the film, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't until later that I realized that this guy had, I mean, much later, guys, like much later, that I realized that his things that he was saying actually had a little bit more. It was highbrow considering that it was lowbrow. And it's kind of a confusing thing.
Because he's Texas.
He's
super Texas.
Yeah. So you sort of appreciate the things that he's bringing to the table in between, sort of like the bumpers in between the film and the commercials.
Yeah.
And, after that, I was like, kind of hooked. And then, I got the opportunity to go see him and meet him. He's really cool.
Yeah. That's one thing I've been, like, when I've been watching some of these movies, a lot of times in some of the movies I've watched, I'm more interested in getting to that commercial break to hear what he has to say than I am the movie sometimes. And, my fiance comes walking in. She goes, well, you've been watching a lot of weird stuff lately. And she ain't even talking about the movie. She's talking about him on the screen just talking.
Mm-hmm.
But, nonetheless, I mean, it's good. But what I was getting to, we sort of got sidetracked there.
Oh, sorry. I do that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the nature. We're going to change this show's name to Sidetracked. But one movie.
Pop-asides.
one movie that I had never seen, and it is like one of my top favorite now when it comes to. Because okay, before I tell you what it is, used to my go to was I'd watch Halloween early, like the first week of October, because it sort of gets you ready, like it gets you in that Halloween mood, and everything's starting to smell good. It's getting colder. It's crazy, and it's like yes, Halloween. And then on Halloween night itself, or the night before Halloween, I watch Halloween 2. Just because I'm one of the minorities that.
More than night he came home. I don't know how you're a minority. That is a great movie.
Well, I know, but
like I love Halloween 2.
But
I literally could. The only thing we screwed up this year is if I had more time, I would have loved to have done a weekly just to go a play-by-play of all the movies we're watching right now.
Oh, it would have been great.
That would have been the best. But I don't even think we'd talk about today. You guys are probably like, "Where's the pipe talk?"
Yeah.
But this is what you're getting.
Yeah, sorry.
We're smoking Howl of the Wind and a Fern Down pipe and a General MacArthur. There you go. There's your tobacco talk for the day. We promise we'll get more on track as things progress.
But yeah, it would have been great to sort of do that. But wait, where was I going with this? Oh yeah, so that's how I would do it. I would watch Halloween 2.
Night before.
Yeah. I don't want to sidetrack this, so we're gonna come back to Halloween 2 because I'm tired of putting off the audience about this. The movie, it was recommended by a friend at work who has great taste in movies. It's called Trick or Treat. Is the name of the movie.
I don't. So what this is for you guys that don't know is that was a very. I knew it was coming too. That's the thing. Like he wasn't even hiding it. Like
no, I wasn't subtle.
That was a very long-winded setup to
Listen,
a joke.
I'm Irish. We're not subtle with our hellos. We're subtle with our goodbyes.
I guess so. That was a super setup joke at my expense. I had mentioned this.
Not to me. I don't think you have. It's just like
every year Halloween comes around, and Patrick can tell you, like, I'm like a junkie when it comes to horror movies and Halloween, as you guys probably have heard. And every year they always ask me, like, what is your kind of go-to film for Halloween? This is on Halloween Day, so this Thursday, I will be watching Trick or Treat. And I say it every year. I watch Trick or Treat. It's my favorite Halloween movie. It's an anthology, and it's wonderful.
That's so good.
And I tell people all the time to watch specific movies, and no one listens. And then we get another guy to come into work, and like everyone sort of,
Well, it's the minimalist footwearing guy.
Yeah, it's the minimalist footwearing guy. He's a good dude. He's got good taste. As a matter of fact, he's interesting because I don't know anyone who really aligns with me music-wise until I met him. I was actually shocked. He would say like, "Oh, you listen to this?" I'm like, "Yes." "You listen to this?" "Yes."
I didn't know you like the same music he does.
Yeah, minus like Tool.
Tool.
And I probably should give Tool another go, but I like Radiohead, I like Interpol, I like a lot of like post-punk stuff. Yeah. So it's weird he's bringing up these bands that I really admire. And I can never get anyone to kind of like fall in line with the things that I like to listen to. So anyway, it's peculiar. But the point is that we're a very inclusive group. So someone's opinion is sort of like this new frontier of thought that everyone kind of grasps onto, and everyone sort of collectively does things. I always like equate it to, it's called the new old girlfriend. Like there's always something that a new or old girlfriend imparts onto you that you will not abandon for the rest of your life. I put my keys in my back pocket because of an ex-girlfriend. I play video games in ones in which you can play good or bad as the good guy first, because then her theory was, if you play good all the way through, then you know how evil you can actually make it the second time through. So now I play like that. So there's these weird things that like exes have imparted on me. Just like when we introduce a new employee, they impart a certain amount of philosophy or their own personal experience on us. So everyone flocks to this guy for film recommendations, and everyone's like, "Hey Zach, have you seen Trick or Treat? Hey Zach, have you seen Trick or Treat?" I'm like, "Yes, for years I've seen Trick or Treat." Extolling its majesty, like saying that it's the Halloween greatness, and no one listened. And now all of a sudden he comes around and he's like, "Oh, that's the greatest Halloween movie I've ever seen. I've only been talking about it for 6 years." Probably longer than that.
I mean, it is a really good, it's a really good, because it does a lot of subverting in a way. Like,
It does a lot of subversion. It does a lot of like
not too much jump scares.
Right. No, not too many. Really, not really any.
No.
Maybe like that last kind of
that last
story, but
yeah.
like it kind of subverts expectations. There's a lot of tip of the hats. There are moments that it does feel derivative, but it turns back on itself. There are tropes that are homaged, but ultimately it's really fun. It kind of reminds me of the old Creepshow films, which, if you didn't know, Shudder also reinvigorated Creepshow. Greg Nicotero, who's a great FX guy, is set it up. He's directed and he's done all the makeup for The Walking Dead. He's worked on pretty much every single Quentin Tarantino movie, I think, from like Dusk Till Dawn on. I know Dust Till Dawn was directed by Robert Rodriguez, but Tarantino did star and wrote it, so get off me.
It
still has like his fingerprints on it. So this guy has like the pedigree. I mean, he worked on old Romero zombie films. I think he was even on set for the first Creepshow. So this guy has the pedigree, and he's sort of reinvigorated this sort of anthology.
The first episode's real good. I watched it.
I really enjoyed it. I mean, because it kind of has like a Lovecraftian sort of setup to it. But you guys, I mean, like, definitely check that out. But I mean, like, back on Trick or Treat, I mean, Trick or Treat's probably one of the closest to perfect, because the way they intercut things. So you'll need to the reason you need to watch it every year is because you do catch things every single time.
Yep.
The stories tend to cross.
Yeah, that's the part that really sucked me into it. That I love about it is that it is 4 or 5 individual stories, but the characters sort of go in and out of each story, and it doesn't tell one story and then go to the next. It sort of weaves them in, so it's it's just really good. It is enough modern but enough old school that I think it really should be probably one of the best Halloween movies of all time. Because if you're fans of Halloween, you're gonna like it, and if you're fans of the more modern crap, like not crap, like Happy Death Day was, decent, and it was fun. But if you like Halloween, but you also like stuff like Happy Death Day, you're gonna love it.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That's a good movie, Happy Death Day.
I mean,
I didn't dislike it naturally.
No, but it's just like, if you like old and you like modern, Trick or Treat really hits it on the head. And that's like a 2010, 2011 movie. Something like that.
I think it's older than that.
07 maybe.
I think it. So Trick or Treat had a very weird situation happen.
It was in development for a while, wasn't it?
It was in development hell for a while.
Yeah.
The movie was filmed, and then it was going to be released. Then it got pushed, and then it got pushed again, and then I think it got pushed again, and then 2 years later they just directly released it to DVD. It never saw any theatrical release.
Really?
So it almost hamstringed one of the most perfect Halloween movies ever. It really did go through like a nightmare scenario where like it was like a much longer. So it might not have been. So 01 was The Ring, which is The Ring and Super Troopers came out pretty close together. And the reason I bring those two up is because Brian Cox is in those two movies.
Yeah.
And then Brian Cox did, of course. For those of you who don't know, Brian Cox is in Trick or Treat. Also, Brian Cox, for those of you who don't know, a little trivia, he was the first Hannibal Lecter.
Oh, really?
Yes, he was.
Huh.
Before Anthony Hopkins, Brian Cox was Hannibal Lecter in, I think it's called Manhunter or Mindhunter. I think it's Manhunter, which is essentially the first Red Dragon. That's the reason why, because people don't realize it goes Red Dragon, Silence of the Lambs, and then Hannibal.
Yeah.
People think Silence of the Lambs is actually the first film. Really and truly, the reason they didn't make Red Dragon or Manhunter first is because it had already been made.
Yeah.
And they went right into Silence of the Lambs, and they recast Hopkins as, Hannibal Lecter. But Brian Cox originally was Hannibal Lecter.
And if you still are sort of wondering who this person is, I guess if you're more my age, he's Stryker from the X-Men.
That's a good pull.
That's where I know him from. Like, anytime I see him in a movie, I go, oh, he's from X-Men. Mm-hmm. Which I think he showed up in X-Men 2, the second one.
But I do not know why that thing went into development hell. I know it was like an 06, 07 movie, but it got pushed back because I didn't see it really until 08. And then or 07 or 08. So it might have been 05. I knew it was like 2 years before I remember because I saw a trailer, I was like, that looks interesting.
Yeah.
and then didn't hear anything about it for years.
Well, it does. Okay, I'd have to go back. So the first X-Men, the girl that plays Rogue, she's in this movie, and I cannot remember. She has a gap in her teeth in this movie, and I think it's real. Like it's not.
It's
fake.
It's a real gap.
And I don't know if she had a gap in the first X-Men movie. And that came out in 01.
They might have fixed it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If X-Men came in 01, then this would have been before that. But I want to say she had a gap in the first X-Men, and then slowly didn't have one throughout the series. But I don't.
Well, she sort of came into it. See, this movie definitely would have probably came out before because she was also, I can't remember her name, but she was in True Blood.
Yeah.
Which I never watched because I heard it was.
I've never watched it.
It's just, I heard it was really over the top for no reason. Like very soap opera meets vampire meets like.
Almost like it should have been on CW.
Kind of, except way more violent.
Yeah, more gory, more violent.
A lot of people were obsessed with it. That's the kind of the, sort of like, to me, True Blood, those types of shows were really like what led into Game of Thrones. Because it really just upped the sexual kind of tension, up the sort of violent.
You mean that's what led into the popularization of Game of Thrones enough to be made into a show? A show like that.
I think. So there was a show back in the maybe late 90s, early 2000s called The Shield.
Yeah.
And The Shield's not really anything spectacular looking back on it, except that you have to understand what The Shield was when it came out. Like, that was the grittiest, craziest cop show that had ever come out.
It was a guy that ended up playing the theme.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was a crazy show.
Yeah.
But, like, looking back now, I mean, like, it's like, well, what is this? What is this? No one really cares. You understand, The Shield happened so you guys are allowed to see things like Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
True Blood is another one of those things where it's like they upped this kind of ante and then added in the genre element. And that is essentially what leads to Game of Thrones. You don't get genre like Game of Thrones. Now, I'm not even really a fan, but I'm just saying, like, you don't get to that level just overnight. There is a lot of specific demographic observation that happens that leads to those kinds of shows.
Because if you're going to do drama, it most of the time is true crime.
Right.
And to be able to take that and, like you said, put a genre on it. I mean, it takes a network willing to invest money in it, which first needed a fan base to say we want that.
And you got to think too. I mean, like you're talking about, True Blood is what, a decade, maybe two decades after, you know, the Anne Rice boom of the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, where it's like over-sexualized vampiric kind of activity in Louisiana with Lestat and all that stuff, you know, like where it's like almost pornography to a certain extent. And, you know, I mean, what is it? Interview with a Vampire with Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise. I mean, that you look at that was like 94.
Yeah.
You know? And then you're looking at like, you know, 2004, so about a decade later, which really a decade is too soon for something to be re-released.
Yeah.
You're looking at True Blood. So, you know, that is, it's actually kind of risky. But I guess maybe they thought they still had some of that Anne Rice fandom. And I guess they did because the show lasted quite a bit. Yeah. But True Blood...
CW sort of had their own
CW
vampire
had their own sort of thing. Well, later.
Yeah, later.
But
trying to cash in on it.
But I mean, like if you look at True Blood, you look at
Twilight.
What is that? Twilight. Yeah, definitely happened around that. What was that thing what's that show about the killer? Dexter.
Yeah.
A lot of those shows, like, sort of, I think, gave rise to like sort of like weird genre things.
Yeah.
Kind of like, because I mean, really, True Blood is, from what I gather, is a soap opera wrapped in vampire. Just like any great genre really is something else wrapped in the veneer of something else. Dexter really is like a crime show wrapped in a serial killer.
Yeah.
You know, so. I've
heard great things. I've never watched it, but I've heard good things about it.
It has its moments. First season, if you watch the first season and quit, you'd be fine.
See, any good show to me is a show that you could watch the first season and quit. Even if the show gets better, or even if the show has great other seasons, if you can watch the first season and end it, I think that's a pretty good show.
I feel like it didn't really have a good it was a diminishing return kind of thing, where it's like, yeah. I mean, like by the third season, you've really given up. Like, I mean, to me, as far as Dexter's concerned, I just didn't care after that.
It's like you're invested with the characters, but the story doesn't do anything for you anymore.
Yeah.
But no, yeah. So, really, not really to wrap it up too quickly, but just to say, Halloween's a good time of the year. I thought we might get into a little bit of the history of it, but that's we'd be here all night.
We really would be. I think we're already kind of rolling into an hour, and I'm sort of at the end of this bowl.
Yeah, I am too. So, there's really, we might do like a little catch up. If we start doing this monthly, might do a little catch up. Be like, hey, we didn't get to it this last episode. We'll get to it now. But before we wrap up, I want to shout out to all the, I guess, listeners that have stuck around.
Yeah.
I know we got a message from Bruno, which really sparked all this. Shout out to Bruno.
Yeah, shout out, man. Thank you.
Yeah,
kind of reminding us that we had obligations.
So
we do like doing this. It's just been trying with all these different family and personal and just really growth. But I mean, I think that there's a little kind of shaking off the rust.
Yeah.
We are still sort of everywhere. I think when you sort of tune into our podcast, you're really not expecting anything other than quite an extensive amount of rambling with some tobacco up front. It's honestly, the name is almost a little misleading. Every once in a while we get really in depth into tobacco, but I think after this long extended period of time, I think we had a lot to talk about.
Yeah. And this time of year, we just had things to say. So
specifically about the genre of film and the season itself.
But yeah, before we go, can't stress this enough. You should get Shudder and watch the last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs.
That's right.
If you are a fan of horror.
That's right.
And if you want to know more about the goings on about the film that you're watching, I do. I love research.
Well, I think his commentary is pretty much spot on. So
yeah,
definitely check that out on Shudder. But with that being said, everyone have a happy Halloween, and
Be safe.
Always give a treat. Don't get tricked.
No, don't get tricked. But all right, y'all have a good one.
See ya.
This has been a Pipecast production.
And we hope to see you at the next full bowl.